Welcome to the Gifts Podcast, where we dive into the transformative topics that elevate our lives. Today, my guest, Aimee Chada, is a woman who travels the world as a tour manager. Less than 2 years ago, Aimee was in a job that didn't excite her. But it just so happens that as she was sitting at her desk, she was handed a brochure that sparked her interest, enough to find out about a kind of job that at first she couldn't believe was real. She's joining us today to let us in on the secret of how it took her 8 months to figure out just how real it is. Today, Aimee travels the world without spending her own money. She makes thousands of dollars working as a part-time freelance tour manager with assignments from 3 different companies that send her all over the world to meet, greet, and manage groups of happy travelers. It's a dream job that she unlocked the code for. And she's here to share how she did it with us today.
So, welcome, Aimee. It's so good to have you join me today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about you. What's something
Okay.
you'd like to know about you more personally that you love
Mm,
to do?
For sure. So, a little bit about me. Personally, I'm married. So, I've been married for 24 years. So, I have 2 adult kids, not kids, but my kids, but they're adults. So, that's kind of a crazy time of life. My son, Jaden, is 24, and my daughter, Simone's 22. And my whole family, apart from me, is really into music. So they either write songs or my son produces music. My husband sings and writes. And then there's me. So I don't really do music, but I do other things. I love speaking, public speaking, encouraging women. I've done a lot of that over the years. I had an event, an organization for women where I'm just encouraging women in their story and how they can inspire others. Did that for a number of years. And then I guess for fun stuff, I love to travel. I love outdoors. I love doing hiking and getting into nature, going in the mountains when I'm in BC. I live in Ontario, so we don't have that many mountains here, but when I can, I love to get out into nature and just I find that really relaxing and therapeutic, I guess. And I have 2 dogs too, so I love animals. I grew up going to a farm. My mom grew up in a farm, and then I ended up as her kid. We always went there and had celebrations and Christmas and all of that. So I'm used to, the outdoor life and something that I love. And then maybe lastly, I'll just mention I love also holistic nutrition. So I've always been really, well, not always, but probably for a good 10 years now, been really passionate about nutrition because of my own personal struggles and stuff. And so while I was learning all about how to heal myself and get healthy, I decided I would go to school for it and hopefully help others in the future. So that's one business I haven't started yet, but maybe in the future.
So, you were a tour manager, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Would you like to talk about that?
Certainly. Yeah. I always love talking about travel. Maybe I'll just give you a little bit of the backstory and kind of go from there. So, a number of years ago, I'm 46 now. And, a number of years ago, I'm hitting early 40s, getting to 45 ish. And I'd raised my kids, like they're grown, had a career, multiple different things over the years, but I was working in a retirement home at the time. So my education background is gerontology. So I went to school to learn how to plan programs, therapeutic, recreation, special events for seniors, right? So I had done that in a few different scenarios. And now I was working in a retirement home and I was the manager of the programs department. And I'd been there for a number of years. And I started to just develop this angst inside of me. And I was just thinking about my life. Like there were so many things going on where, as I said, my kids were grown. I was going through perimenopause. I had started like developing all these crazy symptoms, like I heard someone call it sleep terrorism, where like, and then you just can't sleep. I couldn't sleep for a couple of years. And I loved my career. I love working with seniors, but where I was at the time, some things started to change and I just was feeling really stuck. And I started to think about my life. And as I read online and get involved in all these like groups for 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, everybody says the same thing. And it was this whole process of, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Like, is my life going to look like this for the next 30 years? So this is kind of the backdrop. And, you love being a mom, love being married, but you have your struggles. And then you get to this phase where you're just like examining your life. And that's where I was at. So I started to think, was this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? And I started to recall and remember like so many of my dreams. And one of the biggest dreams was to travel the world. I have always loved culture, people. I love learning about different cultures and how people do things. I love exploring. So I was kind of an only child, even though I had two siblings. They were a lot older than me. So I was very familiar with exploring on my own, going in the forest where I lived and like, what's around the next corner and what can I hear and what adventure can I develop for myself? And so I just started thinking like, has been the way I am almost all my life. And I've always wanted to travel. And I had some opportunities when I was younger, but financially, as you get older, you're raising kids and all of this, I wasn't able to do it. Plus, I'm working a 9 to 5. You get like 10 vacation days if you're lucky. And that's not enough time to travel the world. So I'm getting to the crux of the story. It seems like a long story, but the backstory is it's really helpful to understand why it was such a massive moment in my life. So I'm sitting in my office as the recreation manager, and I'm always working on my calendar for the next month, right? One of my residents comes in and she has a brochure and she sits down in my chair and says, "Hey, Aimee, can I share this with you? Whatever." And she starts telling me about these tours in this brochure and that she goes on these trips. And she thought it would be so cool if our residents in our home could go on these trips together. I was like, okay, that's a great program idea, right? So I take the brochure and I start looking through it. And as I'm reading it, by this time she's gone, I start to read about this tour manager. And as I'm reading, it appears to me that the tour manager is actually going on these trips with these groups of people. And the brochure is highlighting like countries all over the world, trips all over the world. So immediately this piques my interest. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, is this like a real thing? And could this possibly be like the change that I've been looking for in my life? So I go on the website and over a few weeks, I just start researching, like looking into this whole thing about what is a tour manager. And it was really, really difficult because apparently, which I learned a little bit down the journey, tour managers have multiple different names and different tour companies do things differently. Some have tour managers, some don't. Some call them this, some call them that. So it was like this endless research that I was doing to try to figure out, is this actually a real thing? And it was a lot of work. But finally, I thought this company brochure that I had, you know what? I'm just going to reach out to them and see. So I emailed them, took a little while to get anything back. And finally, when I did, they said, "Hey, actually, we're bringing some people in for interviews in the next couple of weeks. So do you want to pick a time?" And I was like, "What?" And the whole time I'm reading about this, Elaine, I'm thinking like, this is a scam. This is totally too good to be true. There is no way this is a real thing. And I am super skeptical. My dad was in the military. He was in the police force. I was taught to not believe anybody, especially the people that come to your door. And my kids goes to the door selling something. I'm like, no, I'll handle it. I know how to say no, right? So I choose an interview slot, of course. I go to the city where the company is, and this is a few weeks later. I go in, I'm waiting, and I'm just running through my head. Don't get too excited. Don't get too excited. This is probably not real. You're probably not going to get asked to do it. If you are, you have to pay a bunch of money. Just don't get too hopeful. So I go in for the interview, and I'll make the story a little shorter, and you could always ask me questions. You have totally got my heart now. I know. Like, it's crazy. So I go in, I sit down, and the two ladies are amazing. They seem like really real, cool people. So I'm starting to like calm down, but I'm super nervous. Anyway, they asked me a bunch of questions, and I had like prepared for hours and hours, just imagining what types of questions they would have, trying to figure out how I could show that my experience and my skill set would do the job. I was doing everything I could. I was reading about the industry, reading about these companies and that company. And they hardly asked me any like questions. They asked me a few, but I was kind of blown away by that. But the interview went well, and I thought, okay, I left and I went down to my car. The interview seemed to go good. And I called my husband and I freaked out because I was like, oh my God, babe, I think this is a real thing. They have a massive office. There's like 50 people working in there. This has to be a real thing, right? And I'm just flipping out. I'm telling them every detail. So I go home and then I wait. And then I wait. And I'm like,
Wow.
oh my God, it wasn't real. They're not going to call me. I don't have very much travel experience. So why would they even think I'm qualified? And long story short, I open the email and I start to read the email and I start bawling because the email said basically, we would like to offer you a tour to Portugal. It was my first tour and it will be in 2024. And it was back in February. And I just basically started bawling my eyes out because I was like, there is no way that this is a real thing, but it is a real thing. And I just could hardly believe it was like, if you've won $1 million in a lottery and you can just hardly believe that that would actually happen to you, that's how I felt that day. And basically that changed my life. And maybe I'll stop there. And if you have other questions or I can go in other directions, but
I love sharing, like you shared in the beginning, how you love just helping women find their footing,
Mhm.
especially like if they are empty nesters or they want to know, well, what am I going to do now? Well, let's start with this. What typical day look like for a tour manager?
Okay, a typical day.
Is there one?
Yeah, probably to a degree. There are definitely things that tour managers do consistently, but the thing about it is every company is so different in what they expect. Like I said, when I was sharing my story there, every company expects different things, even has different names for the role. And so you really go company by company. And when you apply for these jobs, you're going to be learning and getting training from each individual company. Typically, I should say, there are two roles, and people are probably more familiar with one role over the other. So there's a tour guide, and then there's the tour manager under whichever name it's called for that company. So a tour guide is somebody who usually is in the destination you're going that provides on the ground tours and information about the country that the group is going to. But a tour manager is somebody who actually travels with the group from point A to the destination. So whatever country they start, they go with them from there to the destination and spend the whole journey with the group. A typical day in the life of a tour manager, it depends on what aspect of the whole process you're in. So if you're at the beginning, there's like pre-departure planning that you have to do. And that's a lot of administrative organizing, preparing yourself to go on the tour. And that looks like checklists of things to go through. So you're going to want to understand your itinerary. You're going to want to know where you're going, what is around the hotels, what are you doing each day, and what might the clients need as you're going through that itinerary. So you're going to be looking at the itinerary like with a magnifying glass, really getting to know it. Because when you go on a trip with usually 30 to 40 people I've had, they want to know that you know what you're doing. And they're asking you every little question. Like you would think some of these questions, you're like, why? Like they should know that, you're kind of thinking that, but they are totally in vacation mode and they don't want to think about anything important. They want you to do everything pretty much. And so I tend to think of myself as a personal concierge to these people in the group. Now, that doesn't mean And you're running around crazy every minute of the day, going to the grocery store and picking up little items for them or running to their room with coffee. That's not what that means. You don't have to do stuff like that. But I do try to go over and above to make sure that the clients really, really know that I am there to support their travel. And if there are any issues or problems, I'm there to help them. And that's where the pre-departure stuff comes into play, where you're really getting organized. So then when you're on the ground with them, there is no doubt that you know what you're doing. So there's the pre-departure stuff, and then there's actually going to the airport and managing every aspect of getting on the plane. And by that, what I mean is just making sure that the process people have to go through at airports, that they know what they're doing and they're able to get through the process. So I can guide them to airport people that can help them, or I can help them, right? But it's getting to know them as well, because you just met them and you're kind of getting to know your clients. And then once you're through the airport and you've done the flights and all that, and you get on to the destination, then at that point, it's probably a bit of a shared role. So usually you will have a tour guide who will partner with you and your group in that destination to manage the itinerary. And so that's really cool, because then it means it's not just you managing everything. You've got an actual feet on the ground professional who knows the place, knows the itinerary, and is able to help you lead the group. And they'll give you all the detailed history and all of that stuff. So as a tour manager, you really don't have to worry about that too much. With the companies that I generally work for and help people get hired with, there's usually a tour guide that's also there for you. So then the typical day becomes following the itinerary. Day 1, day 2, day 3, just knowing what you're going to be doing and following that itinerary, making sure that things go smoothly at the hotels, check in and check out, making sure that when you get on the bus, you have everything that you need, making sure that if anyone's sick, you handle any issues that happen. If there's room problems, that you support them in that. So there's different components of the journey, and I'm really there just to make sure that everything goes smoothly throughout the whole process. That kind of typical.
I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone that has raised a family, right, and managed all that stuff, kids around and, dogs and going places, and whether it be a diaper bag or whatever, it's managing that whole family. Like, let's say going on a trip somewhere, they could probably do this job, couldn't they?
You know what? This role is totally for people who have life experience, like you're saying. People who have raised a family, people who have had careers, people who have lived life, because like you're saying, they have experience in probably doing a lot of the stuff that you're going to be doing on a trip as a tour manager. And that's why when you get into the field, like, you'll find that it's usually people 45, I would even say 50 and over. I'm actually kind of young just because of my scenario of developing a business and working from home. I have the flexibility, and because I've chosen to make this my career. But most people are 50, 55 and over who actually do this for those reasons, for sure.
See, because you're going with your grip, you need to be physically able to do that, obviously.
You do.
Not
Yep.
necessarily being the guides where you don't necessarily have to know all about all the places you're going to. You just have to be able to answer general questions about that, and then they would ask the guide, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you think of it this way, think of the tour manager as the group support person, and the tour guide is the destination support person. Roles differ. And currently, like, I work for 3 companies now, and I'm always looking to work for more. So it's a cool opportunity, because as older people, mature people, you might not want to get back into a full-time career. So you might want to say, you know what? I can only do 1 or 2 trips a year. And that is totally feasible. Many tour managers work and do 1 or 2, maybe 3 trips a year. There are some who've been doing it for many years, and they might do multiple trips a year. But like for me, I work for multiple companies so that I can do more trips, right? But I might want to slow that down eventually and say, you know what? No, I can't take a trip. But right now, like I'm young, I want to travel everywhere. So I take every trip that they offer me. And I'm always looking for more opportunities. I'm always brushing up my resume, looking for places to interview. So that's the cool thing about this job is you can really pick how much or how little you want to work.
That's awesome. How in demand would you say that tour managers are?
Yeah. I have some stats. I don't know if I can recall them well right now. I'm not the best with numbers. So I'll give you an example of some of the companies I know of and how many tour managers they employ. So
Okay.
there's one company, it's a luxury company. And these companies would have multiple tours running all the time and multiple tours booked throughout the year. So this company has up to 400 tour managers on their roster.
Wow.
And these tour managers work in that they're all over the world, all different tours, and they go and stay in a location for about 4 to 6 weeks. They run multiple tours back to back, and then they come home for a while. So that's one example. Another company that I work with specifically currently has approximately 50. That's what was on a call. When I was on a call with all the tour managers, there were about 50 tour managers. And then work for a smaller regional company and they have less than 10. So it really just depends on the tour company. How big is it? How many tours are they doing where they need to have multiple tour managers working for them?
Tell me a little bit about the program that you started with your husband.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. I started doing this tour manager role and my first trip basically to Portugal, I was away and I'm sending pictures to my husband. I'm doing social media. I'm telling everybody on social media what I'm doing, whatever. And my husband, from our friends and family and people he knew and stuff, he kept getting people calling him and coming up to him in the community and not saying, "What is your wife doing? And how did she ever get a job like that?" And then the next question inevitably was, could I do that too? So he had just people asking him all the time while I was away. And he's very entrepreneurial. So the wheels start turning in his head and he messages me and he says, you know, I think we could like make this into something because people are asking me, like literally bombarding me about what you're doing and if they could do it too. And, anyways, that's where it started. So, when I came home after that first trip, which was 2024, February, I got home and really right away, we started discussing how I could transition into making this a business because I know where I was. Like when I was at my job in the retirement home and that space that I was in my head, where I'm thinking, like, there is so much more inside of me that I want to do and experience. And I know that there's more possible than what I'm doing right now, but there was like kind of like a wall. There was like something that was holding me back. And I couldn't figure out how do I actually live this life that I'm envisioning in my head and have envisioned for many, many years. And part of it what came out when I started She Speaks, the women's event, which maybe we'll talk about another time, but that was where this like entrepreneurial how do I help women? How do I lift women up? And I had, me and my husband have a story basically when we first got married. That was, I won't get into it now. Maybe that's another one. But basically, it was a very difficult time that we went through when we first got married. And it was this journey of overcoming the challenge to actually move forward in life. And just the story of that and what happened in our lives was just so magnificent. And I really wanted to use my story to help other people because I had gone through this crazy journey of pain and sorrow and grief and loss and feeling like I'm not good enough, this shame, I'm never going to be able to move forward and actually live a great life. And this transformation happened at that point in my life, way back then, where I discovered that I could move forward, that I was good enough, that I was worthy of a life and all the dreams that I wanted at that point. And I wanted so bad to help other women discover this and be able to move forward in their life and overcome the things that were holding them back. And so that's what I had done with She Speaks. So I had a taste of what it meant to empower and encourage women and bring hope to their lives. So my passion for empowering women that started way back with those women's events was resurfacing now when I discovered this whole tour managing aspect of life. And I started doing this. And I thought, you know what? My husband was getting all these inquiries about how could I do that too? And I thought, I want to use my story with discovering tour management, living my dreams of travel to empower other women who are feeling what I felt in the retirement home when I was feeling stuck and feeling like I don't want to live this life. I want to live this dream that I had, but I had no idea how to make that happen. And then tour management was dropped into my lap by this lovely lady in my home that I worked at. And that's where this program idea really came from, because I thought, man, if I'm feeling that way, there are got to be a lot of other women who feel like me. And this could be thing for them that breaks them free from feeling stuck, from feeling like they can't travel because it's too expensive. They can't travel because they don't want to go alone. Well, you're going to be with a group. They can't travel because they can't afford it. Well, all your expenses are paid and you get a salary on top of that. You don't want to travel because you're scared of doing it by yourself. Well, you're going to be with a group. And I thought, man, this is like the ultimate dream story come true. The biggest wall that I actually have been running into with this program is that so many women think it's a scam, like I did. They think this is too good to be true. So I'm constantly trying to educate people. And that's why I just really appreciate you having me on your podcast, because I'm hoping that the more women I can reach out to and say, you know what, I'm a real person. I really do this job. It is a real thing. I promise you. It's not a scam. Let me show you how so that your dreams of travel can be totally fulfilled. That's the goal of this.
Wow, that is fantastic. I signed up recently to be a travel agent because there are a lot of perks in doing that too. But oh my gosh, hooking up with a company like you have. Tell us a little bit about your program, actually. What do they get? It's online course, and then we can get into as much detail as you want from there. How about that?
Sounds good. Yeah, for sure. Thank you. The program there's two programs. So I have like a cheaper program that's kind of like an onboarding. So if people are thinking, you know what, this has sparked my interest, but I just am not sure if it's the thing for me. Maybe they're a little bit nervous about, is this a scam? Is this actually a real job? I find it really helpful for those people. So when you purchase, it's called Get Paid to Travel as a Tour Manager, and it's currently $27. So it's a really good price. But getting this, you will basically get everything you need to become a tour manager. You really will. You get help with resumes, help with interview. You're going to understand the basics of the job, and you get a bunch of bonuses in there as well. Just for an example, I put together like a playlist of all kinds of YouTube videos and research that I've done so that people don't have to go and figure it out on their own. Different templates and stuff are in there. Lists of tour companies to apply to is in there. There's so much in there for such a small price. But it's just, if someone wants to kind of get a little bit of an understanding, not a little bit, a good understanding, but at a low price, that's what I offer. And then I also have what I call a 30-day accelerator program. So this is for somebody who knows, I really want to go on that journey and I want to become a tour manager, and I don't want to have to go through everything you went through, Aimee, trying to figure it out, trying to learn all the stuff, doing all the research. I want to just have this so easy for me. And I'm going to give them every detail that I know about being a tour manager, working with 3 companies. I've been to multiple countries all over the world. I work for Regional as well. So a regional bus company, which is another aspect of tour management that you can do, which is more local to where you live. So I have a little taste of it all, and I give everything that they need in there to know. Like when you asked me about a typical day, I have a whole lesson in there I can't remember how long it is, but it could be maybe 15 minutes or so, all about a typical day, every little detail. And there are 6 modules, and some of the modules have multiple videos in them. And I go through everything that you're going to want to know. And the most important things that I go through are, how do you get your resume from what it currently is now, maybe with not very much travel experience? Maybe you have no travel industry experience, but how do you get your resume to where it needs to be so that when you send it in, it's going to be at the top of the pile. It's not going to get buried. And I give lots of technical advice on how to do that. But as well, I give templates of, actually, you can copy and paste what you need to know about what skills you need to have and how you can take from your experience and what you've done and show that you have the skills to be a tour manager. And then I go into interviewing, and I actually give support and practical walkthroughs of, how do you interview really well? Because to do a really good interview, you really need to do a lot of things. You need to research, you need to understand what you're going in for. You need to be able to speak and present yourself and talk about yourself in a way where that person across the table is going, oh my gosh, I just want to pay them like triple because they're so amazing, you know? And I want to help people. And I mean, my program doesn't look good if I don't get people hired. So in my program, I am offering every bit of support that I can give people to actually get people a job. Because without that, then I don't have anything. That's my whole goal. I'm just wasting time making something that's not actually going to help anybody. And if it doesn't help people, it's not going to help me. I'm not going to go anywhere as a business person if I'm not actually genuinely helping people. So that's my goal. And it is a new program. So with the first few people, and I have people in there now, and as they go through it, I am reaching out to them and having calls and getting feedback so I can make the program better and better and better for people in the future.
Wow. So you can live anywhere in the world, right?
You can live anywhere in the world and be a tour manager. I work with people specifically in North America that want to be a tour manager. So I can't speak for countries in Asia, countries in Africa. I don't live there. I don't know the details. Maybe someday I'll branch out. But I actually did, side note, had a conversation with somebody who lived in an African country. Can't remember which one it was now. And they were asking me, oh, is there tour operators here that I could work for? And I reached out to my father-in-law because he lives in Zimbabwe and asked him, are there tour operators? So there are definitely ways to learn. I specifically help people in North America find tour operators to work for through my program, because obviously I'm more familiar with North America. There are tour operators that definitely operate all over Europe, but I wouldn't really want to speak to like African countries or Asian countries just because it's so far away from what I'm familiar with. But definitely, like, there are so many tour operators. I have a list of just 1,000, which is not every tour operator. There are so many and so many opportunities for tour managers.
When you say tour operator, that's the company?
Yeah, the companies that hire tour managers are called tour operators.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Wow. Wow. Oh, wow. So we've talked a lot about mature women. I have a granddaughter who is 26. She loves to travel.
One thing to think about too is there's different niches for tour companies, right? So there's tour companies that do tours for young people or do more active outdoor adventure tours. So sometimes they would have younger people who have a passion for that type of area, be tours, right? So it's a definite option.
Yeah.
My niche is women and like 45 plus, 40 plus, whatever. And within that is, yes, I'm selling a travel program, but really how I reach and empower women is just through empowering women. It's through the topics that women are passionate about. They want to go from feeling stuck to unstuck. So if I empower women to know that you can get unstuck from whatever you're feeling stuck in, and you can move forward with whatever dream and passion you have. And maybe travel is it, but maybe not. Maybe it's something else. But I still want to empower those women and speak life into them.
Do you still want to promote your product to them, or do you want to leave that part out? I mean, I think it could be good.
Oh, no, I definitely want to promote the product. Yeah, sure. But I'm just saying it's not just a travel product. It's housed in this inspiring women messaging. That's why I'm so passionate now about helping women discover their dream and whatnot. It's
Okay.
the same that I've always had. It's just taking a different form.
Yeah. Good. Wow, this was great. I got a lot of information that, I know these women too. And I could just picture them doing this. I can picture so and so here and so and so here. And oh my gosh, she would love to go here. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity.
That's
I
really
think
great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
you're welcome. I enjoyed having you on, and I'm excited for your program. I'll definitely be a client.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you loved Aimee's story and all the information she shared about her journey to becoming a tour manager. I listed her website in the show notes and in the description below this video. And if you found value in the conversation we had today, be sure to subscribe, like, and share this with someone else who may be interested in this information. And as always, remember to embrace your own gifts and keep unlocking the keys to your transformation. Until next time, stay vibrant, stay inspired, and keep shining.